Welcome to Middle Math Academy, Dividing Decimals, level number 2. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. Let's get started. Our learning targets today are I can divide decimals and whole numbers, and I can divide numbers when the divisor is a power of 10. You're going to rate yourself before the lesson. How confident do you feel in our learning targets? 1 is the least confident, and 5 is the most confident. At the end of the lesson today, we'll rate ourselves again to see how confident we are after we've gotten some more practice. Let's look at our opening note. Make sure you're writing with me. If you are dividing by a power of 10, you can count how many zeros there are, then move the decimal in the divisor the same amount of spaces. Let's practice with some examples. You know you're dividing by a power of 10 if it ends in a 0. Let's look at our first opening example. I'll do this one with you. I can see that our divisor has 2 zeros. So the first thing I'm going to do is just write whatever number we have right here. We're going to write all of the same numbers. And because there's 2 zeros, I'll go to wherever my decimal point is. Since there's no decimal point, I'll just go to the end of the number. And I'm going to move my decimal back 1, 2, because there's 2 zeros. So my final answer will be 725 and 600ths. Try the next two on your own, then come back to the video. Here's another look at the first problem we did together. Now that you've completed the second problem, that you should have counted your zeros. Go ahead and check your work for our second problem. Make sure you completed the third problem and we'll check that next. Check your work for the last opening problem. Our notes are going to be really helpful today. If you need any help, you can always refer back to these. So we'll take all of our notes and then we'll practice with some more examples. So our first note is, if the divisor is a decimal, move the decimal point to the right until it's a whole number. Note number 2, move the decimal point in the dividend, the number being divided, the same number of places to the right. Add zeros if needed. So if you're moving your number to the right and there's nothing there, you can add a 0. Then we're going to place our decimal point directly above the new location of the decimal point in the dividend. So directly above the house. Don't forget, we're going to practice this in our examples. It's something we can refer back to for now. Note number 4, then we're just going to treat it like long division. So we're going to continue the long division process as we normally would, bringing down zeros if we have a remainder. Okay, and like I said, we'll go over that in our examples. So our normal long division process is we're going to divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and then repeat. Pause the video, make sure you have these notes down, then we'll get started with some examples. Let's take a look at our examples at the bottom of the page. I'll zoom in on example A. The first thing we do when we divide decimals is we look at our second number, or our divisor, and if there's a decimal, we make it a whole number. So to make 400ths, or 0.04, a whole number, I'm going to need to move my decimal forward 2 spots. So 0.04, when I move it forward 2 spots, becomes 4. Make sure you're writing with me. And I'll bring down my division symbol. And if I move my decimal forward 2 spots in my divisor, I have to do the same thing in my dividend. So 3.514, I'll move my decimal forward 2 spots, and it'll become 351.4. So this is our new problem, what's written in green and red. So now we can set it up in our house. Okay, so this is set up to help you practice spacing your numbers evenly. Your numbers should not be touching each other and they shouldn't be close together. A good rule of thumb is to have a pinky's worth distance between each number. So 351.4, our dividend goes inside the house. And wherever the decimal is, you're going to put the decimal directly above the house as well, because that's where the decimal will be in our quotient or our answer. Our second number, 4, is our divisor, and that's going to go outside the house. So I want you to practice just this first step in example B, pause the video, then come back when you're ready to check if your problem is set up correctly. Remember, you're not solving, you're just doing what we just practiced in A. Let's check to see if you set up example B correctly. The first thing we focus on is our second number in our division expression. So in this case, it's 0.2. And so we want to make 0.2 a whole number. So we're going to move our decimal forward 1, and it becomes 2. Bring down our division sign. And if we move our decimal forward 1 in our divisor, we have to do the same thing in the dividend. So this becomes 5,246. Our dividend is always inside the house, and our divisor is always outside the house. So this is what you should have for example B, and remember, we're just stopping here for now. Let's refocus on A. Now that we have our problem correctly set up, we're going to treat it just like we would in long division. And if you need more long division practice, make sure you go back to level 1. When we use long division, we divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So let's start with division. I'm going to focus on this 3. If I was a size 4, could I fit into a size 3? Nope, it's too small. Okay, another way to think about it is 3 divided by 4. You wouldn't get a whole number. It's less than 1. So we're going to go ahead and put a 0 here. 4 times 0, we're moving to multiplication, is 0. Make sure you're keeping up with me, staying nice and lined up. Okay, we divided, multiplied. Now we'll subtract. 3 minus 0 is 3. And then we'll bring down this 5. Make sure it's right beneath that arrow. So now our new number that we're going to restart this process with is 35. Once you bring down, that's your new number. So I'll ask myself, how many times does 4 fit into 35? It fits in 8 times. 4 times 8 is 32. We'll subtract 35 minus 32 is 3. And then we'll bring down this 1. Our new number we're going to use to restart this process is 31. 4 fits into 31 7 times. 4 times 7 is 28. Subtract. Bring down. The new number we're focusing on is 34. 4 fits into 34 8 times. Subtract. Whoops. 34 minus 32 is 2. Okay, so this is an important piece here. Pause the video, make sure you have this set up. All right, so we can see that we've gone through the whole process, and now we have just a 2. So maybe you've heard of like having a remainder, but there's actually a different way of doing it as well. What we can do is we can add a 0 to our dividend, and then we can bring down the 0. Make sure you're writing with me. And now our new number is 20. How many times does 4 fit into 20? 5 times. And there's no blank for that 5. I did that on purpose. And 20 minus 20 is 0. I'll give you a neater look at this. Check your work, make sure you have this down. And then I want you to try B on your own. Make sure you use your notes if you need help. Let's go ahead and check our work for B. Okay, so here's how we originally set up our problem. Check that you got this step correct. Check the next step. Remember, you can pause the video if you need more time. And lastly, here's what you should have. Notice how much space is between each number. Your numbers should not even be close to each other at all. A pinky's worth distance. So the answer here is 2,623. Now that you've finished page 1, check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Let's take a look at page 2. Go ahead and complete problems A and B, then come back to the video to check your work. If you need help, use the opening notes to help you. Check your work for problem A. Remember, you don't need to do any math here. It's really just moving your decimal based off of how many zeros there are. Let's check our work for problem B. Let's look at problem C. I want you to just set up your problem. So just fill in this portion right here, then come back to the video. The first thing we look at is our second number, 0.2. We're going to move our decimal forward 1 spot and get 2. We'll do the same thing in our dividend. And then we can go ahead and write our dividend inside the house and our divisor outside the house. Remember, your decimal that's inside the house, you put the decimal right on top as well, where the quotient will be. Go ahead and finish solving C, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for problem C, pause the video. You'll notice in problem D, the house isn't set up for you. Okay, so you can use the one that was set up for you as an example. We're going to treat it the same way. We'll move our decimal forward 1 in both of these to make our divisor a whole number. And so then we get 69.3 divided by 3. We'll set up our house. Our divisor goes on the outside. And as you set up your dividend, remember, pinky's worth distance between each number. They should not be close. Now finish solving problem D. Then come back to the video. For problem D, 3 fits into 6 2 times. 3 times 2 is 6. Subtract. Bring down the 9. Now we'll focus on this 9 as our new number. We'll ask ourselves, how many times does 3 fit into 9? 3 fits into 9 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract. Bring down the 3. And our last step, 3 fits into 3 1 time. 3 times 1 is 3. Subtract. And we're left with 0. Let me show you a neater look at this. Make sure you have this down. Before we move to the next page, I want to take a quick look at problem E. You'll notice in problem E that our divisor doesn't have a decimal, but our dividend does. So we're going to keep 5 the same. There's nothing to move. And that means we'll also keep 97.5 the same. So if your divisor in red right here doesn't have a decimal, just keep everything the same. Then we can go ahead and set up our problem. Our divisor goes on the outside of the house. Our dividend goes on the inside of the house. And don't forget to put your decimal on top of the house. Super lined up and neat. Go ahead and complete the rest of this problem on your own. Check your work for problem E. Complete the rest of page 2 on your own, then check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Complete problems A and B, then come back to the video. Check your work for problem A. This video won't go over the answer for problem B. Complete problem C, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for problem C. Complete problem D, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for problem D. Pause the video. Complete the rest of page 3, then check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Go ahead and complete A and B on page 4, then come back to the video. Check your work for problem B. This video will not go over problem A. Complete problems C and D, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for problem C. Check your work for problem D. Complete the rest of page 4, then check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Page 5. Go ahead and complete as many as you can on page 5. Come back to the video when you can't complete any more. This video won't go over all of these problems, but we will go over 2. Check your work for problem C. Remember, if there's nothing left to bring down, you can bring down an extra 0, which you can see on your screen in pink. So pause the video, check your work. Problem F, this is how you should have set it up. Remember, if there's no decimal in the divisor, the second number, you don't need to move your decimal at all. So here's how F should be set up. Go ahead and check your work for problem F. Complete the rest of page 5, then check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Page 6, go ahead and complete all of page 6, then come back to the video. This video won't go over all of these problems, but we will go over a couple. For our common misconception problem, you should have solved under Jessica because she was correct. She moved the decimal forward twice in the divisor, and then also in the dividend, she moved it twice. Melanie only moved the decimal to the right 1 time in her dividend and twice in her divisor. So pause the video, make sure you have this down. And I'll zoom in on what your answer should look like as well. Complete the rest of this page if you haven't. We won't go over any other problems. Make sure to complete the debrief problems at the bottom of the page. In your own words, what did you learn today? How much effort did you put in during class? Rate yourself 1 through 5. And what do you think is a common misconception or a common mistake students might make when dividing decimals or dividing by powers of 10? Once you've answered all of the questions on page 6, You're going to go back to page number 1, and you're going to rate yourself on our learning targets after the lesson. Now that we've gotten more practice, how confident are you? 1 through 5. 1 is the least confident, 5 is the most confident. Once you finish page 6 and rated yourself on our learning targets on page 1, check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Thank you for joining us today at Middle Math Academy, where we practiced dividing decimals level number 2. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. If you're looking for any additional practice, make sure to check out our long division practice in level 1, as well as levels 3, level 4, and our most challenging level, level 5. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.